Um, I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to talk about something today that I've been talking about for about the past 2 years, and it's about singing. And I want you to know that I have qualifications that I brought with me today so that you know that I am really qualified to be able to stand up here today and speak with some authority, which may be translated as BS, but I'm going to go for the authority part. First, in order for you to know a little about who I am and my background, this is me as a school patrol officer. I do have the badge. We couldn't take it home, the little belt and thing, we couldn't take it home, we had to leave it at school. But that was my first really official duty. Second, I want you to know that I was a member in good standing, I suppose I still am, of the Mickey Mouse Club. This is my registration. It says here that Tommy Tyre of 1217 Elizabeth Street, Waycross, Georgia, is a member of the Mickey Mouse Club with all the rights, privileges, and duties that go with it. It has my photograph here. I wanted to be really official. I wore a bow tie for it. So that's me. If that doesn't do it for you, I have other things I could tell you about myself, but I thought I'd just start with those things today. So we're ready to get some feedback. I'm not going to pass these around. Okay, so as I mentioned, I've been talking about this now for about 2 years, and I have become really passionate about the health benefits of singing. And so I talk about that. I've always been passionate about singing, but I didn't always know that it had health benefits. Amen. So anyway, every time I do this talk, I have different variations of it. They're never the same. But I always like to include someone for whom singing was really important in their life. And today that's going to be Maya Angelou. She was a poet. She died in 2014. She was a really unusual person. She was born in Arkansas and grew up there being steeped in Southern tradition. What you may not know about her was that she and her family moved to San Francisco when she was about 14 years old. And at 15 years old, she became the first woman streetcar driver in San Francisco. She was very attracted to the position because the women who did that wore the greatest uniforms, and they got these little coin changers that they did on their belt that you could click, 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 and she was just really fond of that stuff. So she went down to apply for the job, and they said, "Go away, we're not going to hire you." At that time, they didn't hire black people to work on the streetcar in San Francisco. And so she came home, was really distressed, and her mother said, "You know, Maya, why don't you get that big Russian novel that you're reading and take it down there and just sit in their office and read it until they hire you." And so that's what she did. She took the novel down there, sat there and read, and it took her 2 weeks before they said, "Honey, now why are you trying to do this?" And she said, "I like the uniforms and I like people." And they gave her the job at 15. She said she had to do that because she wanted to show her mother that she was woman enough to go through with it. There are a lot of things about Maya Angelou that are really unusual. One was that she was the first African-American woman to be inducted into the Hollywood Directors Guild. She had several jobs before having her career as a poet and an author. One of them was that she was, her first official job, I guess after the streetcar conductor job, was that she became a singer and a dancer. And she has sung all her life. So she did that for a while. She was also a fry cook at a hamburger job because the singing and dancing didn't pay so much. And then she worked as a madam for prostitutes in San Francisco. Now that was really shocking when I read that. I thought, what, today that would be considered something really untoward, and it probably was then, but in San Francisco, they've never really played by the rules there. And so she worked and made pretty good money as a madam. The other things that she did that were quite unusual was that she was the editor for an Arab magazine in Cairo. She was also an editor for the Africa Review, which was also headquartered in Cairo. The thing about her that strikes me the most, and this is where singing saved her life, was when she was 8 years old and still living in Arkansas. She was raped by her mother's boyfriend at 8 years old. She didn't speak for 5 years after that, not a word, not one word. But what she did do was to hum and sing when she was alone. And she did that for 5 years before she spoke. So if you do the math, the year before she started working as the conductor on the streetcar was when she started speaking again. She said during that time, she turned her whole body into an ear. She wanted to know and hear and look at everything that was going on around her, but she was so full of anger, so full of the sense of being unempowered, that she could not speak. But she was able to express herself through humming and singing. It's amazing that she turned out to be the brilliant wordsmith that she is. And I want to read a poem that she wrote that she's most famous for. And the poem is actually, let's see here. Got to find that. Hold on one moment. Sorry for this. Oops. Sorry, Bob. Oh, good. All right, so this, people think it's called, I Know Why the Caged Birds Sing, but that's not the title of it. The title of it is Caged Bird. It goes like this. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream until the currents end, and dips its wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped, his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings for freedom. The free bird thinks of another reason, trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms just waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he claims the sky as his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare stream. His wings are clipped, his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. You can certainly see the influence of her early childhood in that poem, the sense of her being so powerless over things that happened to her, the sense of her being just sort of discounted, and not being able to speak for 5 years. She took the inspiration to write that poem from an earlier poem that she read from a friend of hers, who was Paul Lawrence Dunbar. And his poem is called Sympathy. Listen to his. I know why the caged bird sings, oh yes I do. His wing is bruised and his bosom bare. And when he beats the bars of his cage, he would be free. It's not a carol, not a joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core. It's a plea that upward to heaven flings. I know why that caged bird sings. So when she read that poem, it influenced her to write her own poem with that same theme, which was included in the first of her 6 autobiographies. In her first autobiography, she told the truth. She told about what happened to her. She told about how hard her life was. She told about not being able to speak for 5 years. And the book was banned almost everywhere. The libraries wouldn't put it on the shelf. It was only later, after she had much more acclaim from her following autobiographies and also her writings and poems, that they went back to read this again, and people, I guess, at that time were ready. But this was in the 1960s when she published it. It's amazing to me how singing can help people through the most dire circumstances. It's like whistling in the dark when you're scared. So singing can save you. It saved her. It gave her a voice later on. So what we're finding out these days, the medical establishment is doing studies on singing. They're finding out a whole lot more about something that we thought was just a frivolous activity that you did in the 3rd grade when you were in school. So what they're finding out, I'll give you an example. In a children's cancer clinic, in the lobby, imagine this. There's several adults around with guitars, and they're playing guitars, and everybody there, including the children, are singing children's songs. They're singing for a good while. Before they started singing, they took saliva samples from the kids that were singing. They had a control group of kids who were not singing. So what they did was they measured, after the singing, and this was happening there in the cancer clinic, they measured their immunoglobulin levels of the children before they sang and after they sang, and then they did the control group. And what they found out, that their immune systems got a gigantic boost from the singing. And so their recovery rate from the cancer was by far much higher than the control group of non-singers. It's amazing that singing, something that we've sort of discounted all the time, took it as a frivolous little activity, is critical to our health. Another example is a study that the National Foundation of the Arts did with George Washington University. And this wasn't with children. This was with people 80 years old and older. And so what they did was they were going to see the health benefits for these folks that they were testing, to see if they didn't decline quite as quickly as other 80-something-year-olds. And so they had several activities they had them participate in. There were a lot of art activities, painting, drawing, this sort of thing. Even dancing was in there. And they had singing in there. So what they did is, again, they had a control group. There were 300 people in this study. 150 participated in the activities, 150 did not. So when they started accumulating the statistics, they were hoping to find that these 80-year-old folks weren't going to be in decline quite as quickly as the others. What they found was these folks got better. Their health improved instead of declining. The control group's health declined. They were just hoping for a better outcome than declining so fast, and what they got was recovery. It was astounding. in Sweden, they decided they were going to test to see the effects of 3 different vocal activities to see what effect it's going to have on a group of kids. They were 15-year-olds. And they were going to sing. They sang hymns, they hummed, and then they did Hindu chants. And they found out that the 2 activities that were the most beneficial, and I'll tell you how that was beneficial in a second, was singing hymns, and the most beneficial was chanting Hindu chants. No, none of them were Hindu. They were just singing the chants. So what they found out was that it improved their heart rate variability. And so what that actually means is it's your ability to be able to adapt to things happening to you quick. You know, can your heart rate keep up? Can you really, get through high stress events in your life? And so they were trying to, initially they weren't really looking for that particular result in this group, but that's what they found was, oh my gosh, their heart rate variability is much improved. And the really freaky thing about this is that they noticed in these 15 youngsters who were singing that their heart rates changed at the same time when they were monitoring them. In essence, what happened to them is their heartbeats started synchronizing. And so this was in 2015, and the newspapers at that time printed all these articles about that. It goes, oh, if you sing somebody, your heart rate will sync up with them. Well, yes and no. There are circumstances and you have to do it for a particular length of time, this sort of thing. But what they found out was that this was happening to them, and by golly, it was really a good thing that it was happening to them. It's such a curious thing about singing, about melody, about beat and tempo. It's almost as if it were magic. In 1668, this little dude called Christian Huygens, who was Dutch and a clockmaker, was busy in his little workshop making some clocks, and he had finished 2, and he hung them up on this beam in his workshop, and he happened to notice that in 30 minutes they were clicking at the same time. They weren't started at the same time. One was started and it was tick-tock, and the other one was tick-tick-tock, tock, tick-tick-tock, tock, tick. 30 minutes, tick-tock, they were in sync. So he goes, I'm going to try this again. So he stopped them, started the clocks. Well, I'll be darned, same thing happened again. And it was always in the same pattern. So you know how a pendulum swings like this, right? Well, they were swinging like this. They may have started like this, but in 30 minutes they were going this, like this. Well, 360 years later, students at the University of Georgia did a similar experiment, only they used metronomes. Do you know what a metronome is? It's an instrument that musicians use to torture themselves with. It's supposed to help you keep the beat, but actually it just increases your cursing vocabulary. It is helpful, but it's a struggle. So they had 5 metronomes, and they had them sitting on a little table, and so they started them at different times. And it was tick, 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 tock, tick, 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 tock, tock, tock. Guess what? 30 minutes. 30 minutes it took. And it was all tick, tock, tick, tock. And every other one of these things were doing this. It was like the first one was this way, second one's this, third one like the first. And they said, this is weird, start them again. So they did it and got the same result. Well, the little clockmaker had presumed that the clocks were communicating to each other through the wood beam that they were hanging on. He said, that's what's happening, is they're sending little vibrations, and so they're picking it up, talking to each other. And so the Georgia Tech students said, well, yeah, they're all on the same table. Let's put them on individual little tables and see what happens then. And what do you think happened?
Same thing.
Same thing. So it was not only through the wood that they were communicating. That's called entrainment in this study. not just through the wood, but through the air. Just like those students in that study in Sweden were singing together and the vibrations were going through the air. Maybe on the floor which they stood on, but mostly through the air. So I'm thinking, wow. Now the thing is, if singing is so great and it's so healthy for us and it's supposed to be so natural to human beings, why do so many people hate to do it? There are 3 reasons for that, 3 big ones that have been proven for the most part. The first one is we don't like the sound of our own voices. Now, we don't mind it as long as we don't hear them on a recorder. But can you remember the first time you heard your voice on a tape recorder or a recording device and you said, "That's not me. That is not how I sound." But it is. Because we have 2 ways of hearing, both through speaking or singing, anything. Mostly the sound will come through our ear, hits our eardrum, which tickles these little bones in your ear called ossicles, and those ossicles send a little message into the cochlea, this little spiral-shaped thing that you learned about in the 8th grade, and that transposes these vibrations into electrical impulses that the brain can read. So that's how we ordinarily hear. But we have a second way of hearing our own voice, and that is through the vibrations in our head. Basically, the bones inside your head resonate when you speak. And they have this deep, rich tone that's much deeper than the tone that comes around into your ear. This one, it vibrates inside. It's got a lot of resonance and it's deep. So when we hear that recording to us, we're not hearing it like we usually hear. We go, "That's not me. That's not how I talk." Is it? We're looking for confirmation. This is so common with people that there's a clinical term for it. It's called voice confrontation. And it is so powerful that some people, after hearing that, will never speak in public again. They definitely aren't going to sing again if they hear themselves go, "I sounded like that. Oh, geez." So that's the primary reason, what we recognize when we hear our voice on a recorder is that, oh, that's how other people hear me. The second really big deal about this is your voice on a recorder reveals so much more about you, about us, than we intended for them to know. If you're nervous, how does your voice sound? It's very different. If you're anxious, if you are depressed, any little emotion that you have is going to show up in your voice, and you don't recognize that until you hear it on a recorder, and you go, "Ooh, that's what they're hearing? That's what I'm sounding like?" It's really telling, and so that's shocking for so many people. There are actually therapeutic professionals who help people overcome this voice confrontation. So that's the main reason why we don't like to sing, we don't like to hear ourselves speak. The second one is, at some point in grade school, some wise ass said to you, "Honey, just move your mouth, let the other kids sing." Our voices are so personal to us. It's the one thing about us that's invisible but audible. But it is as critical to us as our body. It is this thing that is us. It is an extension of us. Well, when you get voice shamed, it could be your mother. Like my mother said to me, I was learning to play the guitar. I was 12. Playing and singing, and I would go, "Oh, listen to this." And she said, "Honey, go into your room and do that." I was like, "Oh," or, I thought she loved it as much as I did, And so then there are always those people who go, "What do you do with all that money?" And you go, "What money?" "The money you saved on voice lessons." Every time somebody says something about your voice, it goes right here. you close down a little bit more. It is a shaming of sorts. A researcher in Germany, when interviewing people, discovered that people who have been voice shamed in their past felt like when they were being forced to sing, if they said, okay, you've got us, this is church, God's listening, you better sing. It felt like persecution to them. It felt like, oh my God, I can't do this, I can't do this, I cannot do this. And it comes from voice shaming. So you got two things right there, two big strikes against you for singing. The third one is modern technology. Because when we listen to music on the radio, it's so perfect. All those people sound so good. And you know, they're just, those are the professionals. And so we think, well, you know, that's how you're supposed to really sing. It's like they sing on the radio. But the truth about that is in the studio, they fix everything. They fix all the mistakes. They can take a section out where you sang a flat note and put a normal one in. It's so, I don't know, it's so high-tech these days that nobody produces a funky record. You're not going to, you know, maybe somebody recording in the basement and not using a lot of reverb, like artists like to do. If you're in a band, yes, you love reverb if you're a singer. Because you know why? You start hearing those little deep resonances again in your head that you're used to hearing from your head. So here we've got not only the best singers in the world doing recording, but you've got technology that's fixing every little mistake they make, and we're comparing our voices to them. That's like saying, if you're going to stop singing over that reason, that's like saying, well, I'll say this. Singing is so important. It's like sex. You should not leave it to the professionals. We need to overcome our fear of singing for the health benefit of it. So I'll tell you, my friends and I that sing together, we're really crazy about singing. And we're, you know, we do sing in public like we did today, but that's not where we really get the biggest kick out of singing. The biggest kick we get out of singing is in a stairwell somewhere, or a bathroom that will accommodate everybody, or the Wyatt Tower, or hallways that are tiled and long with hard walls, because you know what? We're getting those deep, resonant sounds that we really like to hear in our own voice. We're getting to have those again. It is magical. I remember one time we were singing for a benefit, I guess it was in the library in Silva. This is when we discovered we really would rather sing in a stairwell than sing for people, unless all the people could get in the stairwell with us. So we were warming up. We were warming up for this little concert we were going to do. But we were having such a good time singing in the stairwell, we didn't want to leave that to do the concert. So it's times like that for us where the real magic happens with singing, where the healing happens for us. And as I said earlier, Wyatt Tower is a great place if you have 13 or fewer people. If you have more than that, then it becomes deadened. But if you've never been to the Wyatt Tower, you need to go. But it's this big stone tower with a very tall ceiling. The floor is concrete, stone all around. It has a window and a door, but it doesn't have glass in it nor a door in the doorway. And we go in there, and sometimes the light shines in through the window and sort of dances for us and on us. And so we kind of get this feeling of reverence because the place is special. It sounds sacred. And we sing in there, and we are there for a good while. We sang there on New Year's Day one time. We had to go in there and sweep it out, and we were standing on about 2 inches of ice. But we sang like it was the only thing to do. The last time, or one of the last times we did it, this was, I guess, last summer, we gathered up there, just, a few emails, and said, okay, come on, let's go sing in the Tower. I had a guest from out of town, and I wanted that to happen for her because she wanted to start an Ubuntu group where she lived in Hilton Head. So, emailed a few people, we showed up, we started singing. We did get taken away. We were just in heaven. And usually when we're singing there, it's not busy. But this was summer, and so we had some people milling about. And so we had a group of kids who go, are y'all a church or something? Are y'all having church? And so somebody said, well, yeah, I guess so. I guess we are. And then someone else came and had said, oh gosh, do you come here every week? I said, oh no. And then we had this family, young, I'd say in their 30s, athletic-looking people, really nice folks. And somebody in our group said, well, why don't you just come in and stand in the middle and we'll sing you a song? And so that's what they did. They came in. The guy was real tall, kind of a burly dude, and his wife was really sweet, and they had, I think it was maybe an 8-year-old with them. So they got in the middle. In fact, it was Gail that said, come in and stand here and let us sing to you. Am I right? Okay. So they got there, and so we sang, I think we sang that Tibia Payem song that we sang for you today. And so it was such a new experience for these people that they were a little bit stunned. They were certainly taken aback. And the big burly dude was in tears. After the song was over, he came around and either hugged everybody that he got to or shook their hands and thanked us so much. He said, thank you so much. That was just incredible. That was the most wonderful thing that's happened to me in a long time. And so we were in tears too. When he started crying, we had a hard time keeping a dry eye. But by then, we wanted it to be the very best we could do. We wanted it to be the gift that we could give them that day and at that moment. And for them, it was the right gift, and for us, it was definitely the right gift. Now, we didn't go up there with the thing in mind that, we're going to sing and we're going to be so much healthier for this. We're going to have better heart rate variability. We're going to have reduced stress. We're going to know none of that. We just did it because we know that when we do that, we feel so much better. We feel connected to some kind of mysterious something that connects us to each other. I hope that you can, if you're someone who has a fear of singing, overcome that for the health benefit. You don't need a stage career. You don't need to really sing for other people. But if you are alone in your car, and you do this already, and the radio's playing something that you know and like, you're going to crank up the radio and you're going to sing. It's about the best thing you could do while you're driving a car. If you can sing while you're vacuuming or mowing the lawn, you can't hear yourself so well with those, but that sort of gives you an element of safety. So, they won't hear me if I'm vacuuming really, so it's, and that's the healthiest thing you could do while you're vacuuming. I encourage you to look for people that you trust enough to sing with. In the 10 years or so that my friends and I have been singing together, we have developed such a trust with each other that we can actually do solos sometimes in front of these other people. Now, I can guarantee you, the first year we sang, that didn't happen much because we were still guarded. We were still hearing that third grade teacher say, okay, now, honey, you move your lips while everyone else sings. So, in the years, we've gotten closer. Through the years, we've gotten more comfortable, feeling safe within these groups that we sing with. And yes, there's a lot of good health happening in that. I think Brian Eno, if you know who he is, he's a music producer. He was in a glam rock band for years, but he really has it. He says it best. This is what he says. I believe that singing is the key to a long life, a good figure, a stable temperament, increased intelligence, new friends, increased self-confidence, heightened sexual attractiveness, and a good sense of humor. I think we should take his advice and sing as much and as often as we can. And with that, I'll tell you this afternoon at 3:30, we're going to have a little gathering in the chapel. We're calling it the St. Groundhog's Day Sing. And so what we're striving to do, when I mentioned this to the powers that be at the chapel for us to do that, I said, we'd like to do a singing where you just sing as a spiritual practice. Well, I'll add to that as a health practice. So we're going to gather today at 3:30 in this room. I don't know who's going to show up. I invited everybody I could think of to invite. People who sing, people who don't sing, people who don't know anybody who sings. And I've always said this to it. I'm looking for people who love to sing. I'm looking for people who used to love to sing. And I'm looking for people who think they might love to sing. So if you're somebody who would like to do that, I would encourage you to come this afternoon at 3:30. It's a very safe environment for testing your wings, singing. We're going to do songs that you don't really need to be looking at sheet music for. They're going to be simple tunes. But I would like for you to be able to have the experience that we have, at least to some degree, to see what it's like to be in a group of people who are not going to judge you for the way your voice sounds, and that you can express yourself fully in a group. I hope you come today. Thank you very much.